Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anurag, and I work at global backbone provider Hurricane Electric. I'll be moderating this session on taking internet exchanges to tier 2 cities. We have a very nice group of panelists, starting with Mr. Anil Jain, recently appointed CEO of INNOG3. We have Ajay Kumar from Decix. We have Matt Jensen from Facebook, Eric from Akamai, and Mr. Rajesh Charya from ISPI, representing ISPs on this panel. So as I start, I'll first proceed with a quick 30-second introduction with each of the panel members, starting with Mr. Anil Jain. Thank you. Mr. Anil, please unmute yourself.
I hope I am audible.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Good afternoon to all of you. AppNIC team, moderator Mr. Bhatia. I hope Ronak had joined.
Ronak somehow is not able to make it. Sorry.
Okay. My dear friend Rajesh Charya, my friend Ajay, Mr. Matt Johnson, and Eric, and all other. Good afternoon to all of you. We are in introduction is that I have joined INNOG3 recently, but my association with INNOG3 is quite old, almost 12 years, and since I was on the board, and that is why I have constant interaction with Rajesh Charya ji, Ajay Kumar, and all other. And I am an ITS officer with around 38 years on government. With Department of Telecom, and that is a brief introduction which I have. And now I hope that I am in the space with internet with all of you, and I'll be more available and more visible with all of you. So this is my introduction. So Anurag, do you want me to start speaking, or you want introduction of everybody else?
Sure, I'll proceed with the introduction of rest of members and then start with questions. Thank you, Mr. Jain. Ajay?
Yeah, my name is Ajay Kumar, working with Decix Interwire Internet Services Private Limited, taking care of the overall operation of the company. 16-year plus internet industry experience, working start with the Internet Society, INNOG3, all three operations, the Internet Exchange, .in registry, and the IRIN. And as a Decix Interwire, we have the presence in 4 metro: Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, and Kolkata. We started within Mumbai. We are open, carrier neutral, DC neutral. Currently, 5 data centers in Mumbai: GPX, NetMagic, DC5, WebWorks, STT, and recently we have opened our POP in Sifirabale. We have around 200 plus customers. Currently, we offer 2 types of services named as domestic internet peering and SD-WAN connection to the cloud providers in Mumbai. Very soon, we are going to offer this service in other metros. So this SD-WAN connection to the cloud start with 10 Mbps to multiple of gigs.
Thanks, Ajay. So I'll proceed with Eric.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eric from Akamai Technology. So as you may know, Akamai is one of the biggest global content delivery network, which has more than 4,000 of cache nodes deployed worldwide. So our objective is to build and maintain a platform that can deliver various types of content to the end users in a performant, resilient, and cost-effective manner. So my role is the network architect in Akamai, and my responsibility is mainly to frame the network design and standard of the capacity and infrastructure planning for Akamai platform. So I'm also responsible for peering and interconnection with network partners in Asia. So it is my honor to be here in this panel discussion today to share my thought. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Matt?
Hey, I'm Matt. I work for Facebook. I will skip introducing my company because I think that's redundant. I think many of you have known me for some time. I've been doing this for way too long. It's really nice to be invited to this INNOG. This is ironically, despite all the times I've seen all of you guys in India, my first INNOG, because the first actual two in person I could both not make because they coincided with other pre-planned travel. So I'm very happy I'm at least virtually making an INNOG this time around.
Thanks, Eric. And lastly, Mr. Rajesh Charya, representing ISPs in this panel discussion. Mr. Rajesh, you are muted.
Hi, I'm Rajesh Charya, and I think I'm audible this time now, clearly.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm the president of the ISP Association of India, one of the organizer of INNOGs, and this time we are doing the virtual INNOG. I'm also the United Nations Internet Governance Forum MAG member, and earlier I was also the executive council member of the IPNIC. So this is my small brief introduction. In the ISPI, we are taking care of the ISP's interest towards the government, towards the users also, and we are hosting this international event very frequently so that our engineers and our users both should be at par and they should be updated with the latest technology and latest know-how. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Rajesh. So I'll proceed first with the IXPs on the panel. So my first question for the IXPs has been, how is your experience of running internet exchange in tier 2 cities? So when I say tier 2, I'm using the term loosely. What I mean to ask is, how is your experience in exchanges outside of Delhi, Mumbai, and Chennai? You can pick any of the cities where you're present, whether it's say Kolkata or Ahmedabad or Hyderabad or Bangalore. You know, all these super important cities, but somehow not that heavy on the IXP footprint. So I start that with Mr. Jain.
Thank you. As INNOG3 is concerned, INNOG3 is present in Bangalore, Hyderabad, Ahmedabad, and Guwahati as you can say tier 2 city if you take out the grand metro cities out of it. Our experience is that yes, people are welcoming and they are coming because every ISP want that the exchanges should be as close as their own origin. But the problem which we are facing is that as we operate as no profit, no loss basis, and we have very clearly made even the connectivity free of cost. Connectivity means the port charge is free of cost at these tier 2 cities. But number of ISPs who are pairing and who are coming on these exchanges are less. So we have to go and convince them to come as far as possible because they are habitually of having a direct pairing. So this is one. Second, what we are also facing is that what they are saying is the connectivity charges from their ISP to exchanges is quite heavy. So this matter has to be taken up with the concerned TSP, and we have to find out a solution together. So this is my first quick reaction to the problem which we are facing at tier 2 city. But still, INNOG3 is committed to expand as much as possible, and even though problems are there, we would like to be close to as many number of ISPs as possible. Anurag.
Thanks, Mr. Jain. It is good to see your exchanges in far off areas. Of course, it would be even better to see if they have more connectivity and more traffic and more members and so on. Ajay, what about DECIX? Do you have exchanges outside of key cities of Delhi, Mumbai, and Chennai? And how has been your experience of running those exchanges?
Yes, we have internet exchange in Kolkata. So we started this our node in Kolkata in early 2019. There was no order from the customer side in last year, but from this year we received 4 or 5 orders. Very soon we are going to deliver those orders, and we are in touch with many other small ISPs also. they are going to connect, because recently we received order from the content provider. They are going to connect with multiple of 10 gig ports or 100 G ports. Although it was not good experience to start IXP in tier 2 city, however, we as a DKX Interwire want to improve Indian ecosystem. Therefore, our new POPs will be opened in other metros in near future, depending on the demands. Thank you.
Thanks, Ajay. You mentioned that you did not had demand for a while, and now suddenly you got 4 or 5 requests for connectivity. Has anything
Yes.
changed in meantime? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, the order from the content providers came, so the ISPs are also willing to connect.
So you bring me to an important point, which is somehow it feels like ISPs and IXPs are not in the leading role here. It's rather the content providers, which makes me ask this question to our friends from content networks here on this panel. Eric, are you present in any of the exchanges outside of Delhi, Mumbai, and Chennai?
Yeah. Okay, before I go straight to the answer, I would like to elaborate a bit. When we say we present in an IX, actually there are two actual different ways for us to do so. So we can either put a dedicated cache node in our IX partner premises and use that cache node exclusively serving the member. Or we can connect the IX to one of our public infrastructure node in some of the major data center. But from that particular node, we are actually connecting to other network, probably over the PNI. So we do have both kind of setup in India. However, we only have the public infrastructure node in the tier 1 city. So we only have this kind of connection in tier 1 city. But for the private dedicated cache node, we do have a handful of them in the tier 1 city, and we do have very limited number of private cache node in the IX in a T2 city, like Kolkata. So yes, we do.
If I may ask this question, Eric, what criteria do you look for when you decide to connect to an internet exchange? And this is especially in the context if a new exchange pops up in a smaller city. What would you look for over there before you decide that you want to connect?
Okay, when we working on a partnership with our IX partner to put our cache nodes there, we need to make sure that putting a cache node in our IX partner premises is justified, because there is cost for the IX partner to host our cache node. So the space, power, and especially for the transit connectivity. Of course, we believe that it can definitely help the members to offload, to reduce their spending, as it can definitely reduce the IX member transit consumption, as well as bandwidth, like backbone connectivity into those tier 1 city. So we need to find out a workable model with the IX payer, especially in the tier 2 location, to at least prove that model is effective, in terms of cost to our IX partner.
Thanks, Eric. I missed to mention, this was also the question from Mr. Rajesh Panwala from the audience. Just a housekeeping note, we will be taking questions while we are in the session. So feel free to type them, and I'll try my best to pick those questions and direct it to the panelist. If you have a specific panelist in mind, please do mention the name as well, and we'll try to ask them directly. Coming to Matt Jensen. Matt, so you have worked with content providers in probably last few years of your career. So same question to you. How would you pick an exchange? What would be the criteria you would look for if you are given this task of deciding whether to connect or not connect an exchange?
Well, in the end, this boils down to if it can enable connectivity that doesn't exist otherwise, right? And quite honestly, looking at India over the last couple of years, I would say to some extent that need has somewhat diminished in the way that connections to other cities are much easier now. They're cheaper. I mean, they're still not cheap, but they're cheaper. It makes it a lot easier for people to connect in other cities. So we've actually seen less demand for this than if you had asked me that question 3 years back or so, right? But in general, like for us, it's quite difficult to connect in those cities. I mean, right now we have POPs in India in the 3 major cities you mentioned. We had discussions with several IX operators about other locations, but the problem is we have not really been able to make the case for those. With the growth we've seen in traffic, a lot more ISPs in India are actually qualified to deploy caches in their own networks. And that really reduces the need for the IX. Because on the IX, if we put a cache there, we would only be able to serve that portion of the traffic, right? We are somewhat different from Akamai in that regard, that we serve both dynamic and static content. And all the dynamic content, like which especially in India with WhatsApp and so on, that's not cacheable, right? That has to go back to our POP anyways. So the actual benefit by putting on cache on an IX in a smaller city is somewhat diminishing. So that being said, we're still open to this if we find a case where this works, but quite frankly, I've seen this reduce somewhat. And we're obviously also expanding our POP footprint. Like you mentioned Kolkata before, we're actually in the process of doing a POP in Kolkata, which will take care of this. That's currently somewhat delayed because of the overall situation. But I mean, I think in the long run, the way I see this develop is actually us potentially building more POPs in tier 2 cities versus too many actual caches on IXs, which our model isn't that well suited for.
Okay, thanks, Matt. There's a question from audience, which is Mr. Brijesh Chen is asking why the cost of hosting in India is higher. You mentioned the cost is getting lower, and I assume you meant cost of NLD point-to-point circuits from smaller cities towards say Delhi, Mumbai, and Chennai. If that cost is getting lower, what makes you think it still costs you more if you are putting servers in India in general? And that may not be true for a large content player, but for any other any average company which wants to host.
So I was not referring to the cost to us. I was referring to the cost for an ISP to connect somewhere else, right?
Sure.
So we will still provide the ISP with cache servers free of charge, right? This is my cost. We will do that no matter what, right? But that portion that comes from a POP will still have to come either through their transit or via a connection to one of the bigger cities where they can peer with us on the IXs we're at. And that cost has reduced, and we see way more medium or even pretty small ISPs to connect to us in the major cities. So this is why I'm saying, like, I see the case for it becoming less so. I'm not saying the case isn't there, but I see a lot less demand for it now than there was a couple of years ago when it was just nearly impossible to connect in another city in India.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. I'll proceed with Mr. Rajesh here. Mr. Rajesh, as you just heard, Matt, and that may not be just limited to Matt and his organization, but in general, many content providers may come with this argument that when the cost is so low, why bother having more exchanges? Is that even worth a consideration for technical community? And I would add further here that as you are aware and probably you see it better than many of us here. Government is rolling out so much fiber in rural areas. If we don't have exchanges and interconnection happening, we'll end up in having a lot of interconnection just in Delhi, Mumbai, and Chennai. Do we really want that kind of model as a country? Can you please elaborate? And please unmute.
Okay. First of all, let me congratulate Mr. Jain. I think after a long time, a professional person is a CEO of the INNOG3, which he will think from the professional mind, not from the bureaucrat's mind. Okay. Tier 2 city and tier 3 city, lot of smaller ISPs are there, and they are not able to connect to the content and to the exchange because the exchanges are not there in tier 2, and the contents are not there in tier 2, and their traffic is not so large that they buy a peering from their location to the metro city for peering to the content or to the exchanges, because few of the exchanges are now there which has the content also, but still they have to connect independently to the content. What I want is that, like the Euro exchange, they have got the satellite areas, and where the satellite areas are connecting to the ISPs or the customer, and that satellite is connecting to the main exchange at one location. That should be the responsibility of the exchanges or the content. That content should ensure that my content is reaching to the user in the fastest and speed manner, so that the user should experience the speed of the internet. If I compare this internet from initial of 10 years or 15 years back and now, we have got a lot of changes. Now the contents are available, but still the contents are not available so easily to the tier 2 and tier 3 city. And what I will suggest to Akamai and to the Facebook, that why they are not planning for tier 2 and tier 3 city, because they have got more potential after this lockdown and this into this pandemic time, when the people are shifting back to their tier 2 and tier 3 city and they are working from their home. So their uses has increased drastically. And at this moment, your content will be very beneficial for them if you are available in tier 2 or tier 3 city. Otherwise, their experience for accessing your content from the metro will be very poor. So it is my suggestion as a ISPI to Mr. Jain, as to Ajay also, why you are not opening the satellites. And this is my suggestion to all the content, not only Facebook and Akamai, to the Google and etc., that they should come in tier 2 and tier 3 city. You will find a real India over there, because in 4 metro, there is a India, but in tier 2 and tier 3 city, this is Bharat. And they have got the potential, because 65% of the users are from the Bharat, not from India. I think, Anurag, it's okay.
Thanks, Mr. Rajesh. I'm going to head to a question from audience, and it seems relevant to ask this question to Mr. Anil Jain. Mr. Anil, Mohammad Asif has asked this question. INNOG3 allows only organizations with telecom license to peer at their IXP. Hence, enterprise and content players stay away from that. When can we expect the policy changes to allow more networks?
I don't think that this is correct, because lately we have started connecting with CDN and also the big organization who don't have license. Although yes, traditionally we were only onboarding ISPs with the license. So he is welcome. He can connect with us. There is no issue in that.
Thanks, Mr. Anil. For all the content players in our audience, you are welcome to connect at IXPs. You don't need a license. Thank you. So I'll proceed with another question, which is, do we really need content providers from day one? As it turns out to be, content providers typically would have a much higher equipment requirement probably, and power and cooling requirements. Can we have exchanges in the smaller cities without having content providers from day one? And when I say without having, I'm using the words carefully. They are always welcome, but are they? Should they be the only player, as a deal breaker before starting an exchange? I'm going to ask this to our members from exchanges. Mr. Anil.
As I said very clearly that yes, for the last 16 years, we were getting the pairing from ISPs, and we expanded over exchanges slowly, and we have reached to 8 cities right now. But your question whether the content provider is required from day one may not be, because we have recently for the last 1 year permitted the content provider to be there, and we remain number 1 IXP, and we were giving services to the whole country. So this is one, but definitely because the internet traffic is increasing very high, And people like Google, Akamai, Facebook, Netflix, all of them are pushing a lot of traffic. Now the customer need a very low latency, high quality content to be available with them. So at this moment, I personally feel that CDN should be available and should get connected with IXP wherever it is possible. Your second question is that I think the same question which Rajesh has also said, whether we should go to open IXP in small cities or maybe the satellite IXPs, what Rajesh has said. Yes, there is a thinking in all IXPs that we should be as close to ISPs and CDN as far as possible. But there are 2 or 3 factors which are preventing us. Number one, we need available in rural area. You know, this is one. Second, even the TSPs, they are not able to provide the connectivity to all these smaller places. And definitely the most important question with all of us is the cost is a factor. And whatever Ajay was also telling about Calcutta, similar experience we have also at some places like Guwahati and Ahmedabad. Although we open IXP, we keep on begging for the traffic. You know, so the all community together should come together in case they want things should be to the rural area with more cost, less revenue expectation, but the services should be given to the citizen of the country. Yes, we are ready for it, but all stakeholders should also contribute to the same. At least the traffic should be there. Thank you, Anurag.
Thanks, Mr. Jain. You also coincidentally answered one of the questions from audience, which was from Kalpak. He was asking how come traffic from Tata Communications, Airtel, and Vodafone Idea is being exchanged only in Delhi, Mumbai, and Chennai. He's from Kolkata, and he wonders why his traffic to his friends on the other network goes all the way from Mumbai. So I think you already answered that one. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
I can proceed further with the same question to Ajay, which is, do we really need content providers from day one? And since you did try exchange in Kolkata, do you think there's a model where you can have a sustainable exchange without having content providers from day one, run it with few members, probably with their peer-to-peer, ISP to ISP traffic for a while, and then you convince the content players? Is that something which can work or not?
So Anurag, it is a chicken and egg story. Who first? So that's why without any members, we decided that we are going to open exchange at Kolkata. We waited 1 year, so for ISPs to come together. But the problem is with ISPs, small ISPs, we can say the B category and C category, they do not host any content. So there is no much traffic between those ISPs. So the customer of B category or C category, they use content, and content is hosted at Mumbai or somewhere else, or where the content is there. So as per my experience, the content should be closer to the internet exchange.
Sure, that surely makes sense. I don't think we can move content, but at the same time, a large part of traffic is now concentrated on CDNs. I'm sure CDNs are much more flexible than those big fat data centers or cloud providers.
Yes.
I'll take another question. This is coming from Mr. Mahesh from BSNL. I think it seems to be, if I'm not mistaken, it seems to be directed to our friends from Content Prayers. So this is the question directed to Eric and Matt. When ISPs go to tier 2 or tier 3 cities, any case their backbone is consumed by the content provider in reverse way for the local provider. So I think what essentially is trying to say is if the smaller ISPs are anyway carrying the traffic for the content providers to these smaller cities, is that a legitimate use case, and is that a legitimate interconnection policy? Eric?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I grabbed the question precisely, but when I mentioned we don't really have our cache node or very limited cache node in the IXs in tier 2 city, we actually do have hundreds of dedicated cache nodes in our network partner in many cities, yeah, tier 2 or even tier 3 city. But of course, it all restricted to those, major player or medium-sized player. So probably, yeah, those as smaller player might be get the traffic from their upstream in those cities.
Thanks, Eric. What about you, Matt?
I gotta admit, I'm not totally sure I got the question, but what I was alluding to earlier is like the content, the static content that's cacheable, that's already local, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're in 50, 60 cities in India with those, right? The stuff that goes back to a POP and the stuff that goes to the IXs that currently are in Mumbai and Chennai and Delhi, that's stuff that needs to talk to our backbone. So
Okay.
that small portion of the traffic that needs to have a connection to a POP, that won't be solved by putting on cache on the IX there, right? So this still needs to talk to our global backbone. And quite honestly, this is one thing that is very difficult in India for a foreign company to scale their backbone, right? Otherwise, we would be in more cities in India with our POPs. But the solution of like caching on the IX, I actually see diminishing because the caches are so deeply into networks in India already. And what the traffic we exchange over the IXs we have in Mumbai and Delhi and Chennai, that's typically not cacheable traffic because all those people already have caches. This traffic is traffic that needs to talk to a POP, to a backbone.
Okay, thanks, Matt. I'll proceed with a question from Mr. Ram Krishnan Pariyar, our friend from Nepal. This question is directed to our IXP panelist. Can you please update on the situation of RPKI adoption? I assume he means for exchanges, in the context of exchanges, essentially what he's trying to ask probably is, are exchanges dropping RPKI invalids? And if not, any plans of doing that? Ajay, can you please elaborate?
So as you remember, we discussed a few days back that in India, still the RPKI implementation is not so good. So if we implement immediately, we have to drop many ASN traffic from the exchange. So although globally we validate, we have the filters, but for India networks, right now we have not implemented the RPKI validation. But in future, we will be doing that.
Do you have any timeline which you can share with the community?
So for the timeline, it all depends on the IRIN, how IRIN members can have the implementation. Once the India most of the network in India or most of the customers has that RPKI implemented, we will implement it.
Okay.
But there is no definite timeline because
Okay.
we have to work with the community. We cannot to say that if you are not going to implement, we block it. You cannot exchange the traffic with the DKIX exchange. So it is all depend on the community, but I am for it.
Thanks, Ajay. Although you can still go ahead with it. You do not need technically for all the people to create ROAs. Essentially, when you start dropping invalids, you can do that for people who have invalids. So you typically do not drop any of the prefixes which are not signed. So it's not exactly chicken egg thing here. It's more about if you do it, it's not going to harm you, but it surely adds a lot of benefit to the community. I'll head to Mr. Anil Jain for the same question. Mr. Anil, is INNOG3 presently has RPKI invalid dropping implementation? And if not, any timelines for implementing that?
Right now, no. But yes, as Ajay has said that we are working on it. And yes, soon we will be on that particular path.
Sure. I think it's probably we are multiple hats here as INNOG3 as well as administrator for National Internet Registry IRIN. So probably you can have much more impact by promoting creation of RPKI ROAs across your Indian members.
Yeah. Thank you, Anurag.
So I'll proceed with more questions from the audience. Let me see if we can have any more questions. We have a couple of minutes left. Ajit from SIFI has just mentioned that bilateral peering is allowed at NIXI. He's probably trying to inform members here.
Miss, I am not able to understand this particular question. Can you please elaborate this question?
Sure. I think it was one of the comments in the form of question, which was, can ISPs, can NIXI members have bilateral peering? Right now, it seems to be the forced multilateral option where everyone connects with the route server. But is it allowed to do bilateral peering at NIXI?
See, there is no question of allowed or not allowed. We have to see the feasibility and also the network environment in which we work. At present, no, we have not permitted any bilateral peering. I am not very sure how people will react on this and what other IXP members, members like Ajay is saying, but we have to see the economical feasibility also and technical feasibility, whether it is right or not. And another concern which is now propping up in the internet space is the security. So we have to ask, we have to see that aspect also before coming to this. Anurag?
Thanks, Mr. Jain. What I have heard from content players is typically not having option to peer bilaterally is technically a problem, because then they lose control over who gets their routes. Maybe I can direct this question to our friends from content players. Matt, is having option not to bilaterally peer, is that a deal breaker for content networks?
Yes, generally it is. I mean, there is mixed. I mean, there are several content networks that will never do multilateral peering, period. And I understand the reasoning for this. In most of the world, we do not do that either. We do support multilateral peering in a couple of markets. India is one of those, but there is a lot of limitations to that. So sole multilateral peering with no option for bilateral is definitely a deal breaker for a content network, because it breaks all control you have over the traffic and can result in very bad consequences, particularly when there's no PKI enforcement and anything like that. So yeah, having solely multilateral peering is definitely a deal breaker.
Okay, thanks, Matt. And I think we are already out of time, so I'm going to close this panel. We still have many open questions, and I wish time wasn't a limit, but unfortunately we have to close now. I thank everyone for their time.